Where do you stand on gun control and red flag laws?
Aye. So one of my appointments, Sandy, had told me that I only think the only person I think should have guns is cops. He's actually right. I did say that, and I believe that, and here's why. They sell guns out of trunks of cars with signs. They gave me pictures of signs right on the trunk of the car.
Jesus.
No background checks.
Yeah.
No ID required. Who are they advertising to? Who are they catering to?
Yeah.
That shouldn't happen, and especially on a county fairgrounds.
So Attorney General Chris May said she will not prosecute any abortion cases. Do you have a similar discretion, or are you planning on having any policy regarding abortion-related investigations?
I will not be taking any abortion cases. No, that's my wife has a little sticker says we won't go back. I struggle with that because we need to go back to at least Roe v. Wade, but we're not going to go back to what they proposed, and that's just sad that somehow a government believes they have the right with all the HIPAA laws and all these privacy medical, and now they're going to tell you you can't have an abortion. Wrong. Yeah. This is just wrong.
Hi everybody, Adrian Fuentes here. Did you know that the Democrats of Greater Tucson has a website, thedgt.org, and if you subscribe, it's only $20. You can support this great weekly communication where folks get together. Sometimes there's candidates, sometimes folks like me pop on to help understand what's going on in the world. The Democrats of Greater Tucson, thedgt.org. Join up today.
Let's give a warm welcome to Sheriff Chris Nanos. He'll be presenting today for our Monday program. He will talk about the accomplishments of his administration and make his case for re-election to another term as Pima County Sheriff. That would be your third term, right, Sheriff Nanos?
Yes, my second election. I was appointed originally in 2015.
Okay, well, Chris, the floor is yours.
Well, first of all, thank you. It's great to see everyone, and this is my first opportunity to address one of the Democrat groups we have throughout the community. I showed up to Tanque Verde Dems every now and then because I live close by, but I've never really had an opportunity to address anybody. So kind of bear with me. I really want to just kind of talk to you a little bit about some of the things that we first came in with as challenges. I know it's always like gloom and doom, and you're pointing to the last administration for all this bad stuff and the challenges you had. But I think it's important because if you don't see the mistakes of the past or learn from them, and more important than that is learn how we addressed them and how we met those challenges head on and understand some of the struggles we faced and where we're at today. And then I'll get into some of the vision for tomorrow and ahead and beyond. But just talk a little bit about the challenges. When we came in here in 2021, we were a couple of things we just didn't know. First of all, we thought that the jail was clear of COVID. In fact, that's what we were reported to throughout the campaign in 2020. But we quickly learned in January of 2021 that that was not the case. In fact, the first case at the jail that the jail was impacted by was in June of that year, some 6 months prior, but nobody was talking about it. In January of 2021, we learned that there were over 800 different cases, individuals impacted by the COVID virus just in the jail setting alone. So that took quite a hit for us and took a lot of strategies and discussions with the medical field, the health department, Dr. Garcia and others as to how do we address those concerns. But and it really kind of tied into this for us because one of the things we didn't recognize was that When we left in 2016, December of 16, I had left. We left here with a staffing of over 1,686 people. That's actually, excuse my language, butts and chairs. Those are paychecks we were distributing to people, not just payroll numbers, actual people. 1,686. In 2021, when we came in, we had 1,282. So almost a 30%, 25 to 30% decrease. So staffing was critical. And we started looking at the attrition rate at that time. Attrition rate for corrections officers was 6.8. What that means is that every pay period, so every 2 weeks, we were losing 6.8 corrections officers every 2 weeks, 3.5 a week. In the deputy side, the commission side, we were over 4. That's losing 4 deputies every 2 weeks. That's 2 a week. We really had to work fast to figure out how do we address those issues and really put a break on it quickly. In the meantime, though, we also looked at what's going on in our community in terms of how do we provide the public safety and the mission that we need to provide and meet the things that we wanted to provide, community policing programs, and still get the job done. You know, it's easy to sit back and yell and scream, I'm shorthanded, I'm short-staffed, I need more people. But you also have to realize that you've got a job to do, and I can't make people appear like that. So we have to do with what we've got and make that work. And that was a big challenge for the field, for the patrol deputies. The challenge was great, but it really was a matter of just looking at your calls for service, look at your areas of responsibility, and maybe you can shift some bodies around where they're needed, rather than just put people in areas because, you know, one of the board of supervisors wants more staff members here or more over here. Politics should never come into where we position our resources for particularly public safety. We knew that, for example, the Vail area was growing at 19.5% in the last decade. And you didn't have to really research further. Over in the southwest side, 3 Points actually reduced their population and calls for service by 7.5%. Yet we had a team of 10 individuals designed for McGrant to work nothing but the 3 Points area. Yet in the meantime, I'm situated out in Vail with 2 officers, with 2 officers that are responding from Mount Lemmon Highway and Tanque Verde Road, a 45-minute drive. We also looked at the southwest area. The officers there were responding from a substation, the Santa Vera substation over here by Keno Park. And some of those responses were over an hour's drive from that station. So we immediately recognized that we need to really shift our resources, make those shifts happen quickly. We studied our beats and our boundary lines and had to move some of those. Those were things that have not been done in 50 years. But we recognize that growth does happen in our community and we need to make those movements. 30, 40 years ago, when I first joined this department, Oro Valley was really just a really small little township. Marana was pretty much just very much a township, didn't have any real population or any land area. But give it 20, 30 years and Oro Valley's blossomed and done well. Marana's blossomed and done well. But what it did for our patrol division was you had district lines where an officer was responsible for an area that was once all the county, all of our responsibility, but then you had Oro Valley come right in the middle there. And so you'd have a little 2-mile square area here, 20 miles of Oro Valley, and then another 20 or 4 or 5 miles of jurisdiction. It divided you up. It'd take you 30, 40 minutes just to drive through Oro Valley to get to a call. So we needed to reposition our resources, and we did that. But to do that effectively, we also needed to look at our substations and how are they best to serve. Vail, we moved from 2 officers assigned to that district. We relocated and shifted resources to where they now have 22 officers and a new substation. The Santa Fe district, the southwest side, which was 3 points, and other areas, Star Valley, they need resources too. Even though their population was declining, there's other areas out there in that southwest, that Star Valley, that's just exploding. But it made sense that why would you have a station where people are responding better than an hour's away? Why not move that station? So we got permission through the Board of Supervisors and Mr. Huckleberry at the time, and now Ms. Lesher, to redo the station, build a new station out more to the southwest area, more central, so those officers that are responding to those calls are more centrally located. Those were things that we could do right away to help with the limited resources we had. But then we also looked at the idea of, I had come here promising transparency and promising mission-oriented policing, but community policing programs. It's hard to do that if you don't have the right number of staffing, especially when you're obligated to do what? Our primary mission, respond to calls for service. And that's always our primary mission. We've taken great pride in that. There will never be a call that we won't respond to. If someone calls us and wants us, we will show up. Having to do that took a lot of effort from not just me, but my entire team. And they struggled with it, but we then had to address the attrition rate. We can't keep losing people 4 every 2 weeks in the field, or 6.8 in the jail every 2 weeks. We had to stop that, had to find a way to slow it down. One of the things that there's a lot said about morale and how that impacts your attrition. The same goes for pay, right? Pay impacts attrition. If somebody else in your community, another agency, is paying greater than you, your edge for competition is greatly diminished, right? So we need to balance that. We need to look at how we're paying our people. We quickly learned that we had civilian employees here. And mind you, they're oftentimes looked at as the support team, and they don't get all the glory and recognition that our young men and women in uniform do, but they're just as important. And we started looking at them. We had employees here who'd worked here for over 20 years, making $11.13 an hour. That was just crazy. I have a Taco Bell down the street that had a sign out advertising $15 an hour. These are important jobs, and I can't retain people if we're not paying them appropriately. So I met with, at that time, Mr. Huckleberry, later Ms. Lesher, and we put together a program. I just asked, we need to be competitive, and we need to be competitive not with Phoenix and not with Albuquerque and El Paso. I don't recruit there. I recruit here in Tucson. I need to be competitive with those in my backyard. And so we said, I get Marana, Oro Valley, some of the smaller agencies, they're going to always pay more because they have to. They have to compete against the likes of the Sheriff Department or Tucson Police, who are much larger agencies, provide more opportunity for their recruits and their staff. And so they always will, but they're not somebody I compete with because, for example, Marana might hire 2 people in a year, or Oro Valley might hire 1. I hire 40 to 50 in a year. Tucson Police does the same. So I need to be competitive with those in my backyard, that Tucson Police Department. And to get that took a lot of understanding from the board and a lot of work with Ms. Lesher, and we've achieved that through a study called CBiz. It's a company that comes in and looks at every corner you have, every position, and does a study in this area. I don't need to know what they're making in Detroit. I don't need to know what they're making in Dallas. I need to know here. And so we've accomplished that, and that helped a little with attrition. Attrition slowed down. We started seeing it. The bigger issue for me with attrition was, how do we treat our staff? That's key, because let's face it, if If you work for a tyrant, some boss you just don't like, how can I expect you to go out and recruit anybody? Would you go tell your sons or your neighbors or your daughters, hey, come work for the sheriff's department, I got a terrible boss? Or would you be better fit to say, this is a great organization with great leaders and great teamwork and great camaraderie. It's just a good place to work. That's what we needed to fix. That morale where we say, enough is enough. When I came in, we had over 1,100 bullying complaints. Still, because I get, as the incumbent sheriff who comes in after Sheriff Napier, I take on his responsibilities of lawsuits and that. So we still deal with those past suits, but what we really look at is, how do we deal with our staff? We've had 0 bullying complaints since I've been here. We want you to be held accountable. I want everybody, all my team to like me and vote for me and support me, but that's wrong thinking that I should be able to go and ask my associations or my deputies, any of my employees to endorse me. That's a failing on my part. It shouldn't happen because, to be honest with you, I want their support. I do. I want them, or all of them, to endorse me. But the reality is, it's not their job. That's my job. See, if I support them and take care of them and their needs, then maybe I'll win their support. And that's what we're hoping to do. That's what we try to do. Morale, a lot of measurements can be said for it. It's hard to judge. But I look at that attrition rate. Remember, 6.8 is what we started at the jail. Today, we're under 4. We're about 3.6 or 3.7. Attrition of deputies, we were over 4. Today, we're less than 2, 1.89, which is pretty good when you look across the country at other agencies our size. So we're doing better. Pay has helped. And I owe that to the Board of Supervisors and Ms. Lesher for helping out and standing up for the employees, not just my team, but the entire county. But it still was tough to recruit. You know, we faced some challenges with our labor force, right? The workforce was just incredibly slow at coming back. And it's still, for some agencies, my brethren at Tucson Police, Chief Kazmar, who's a really good friend of mine, we have talked about it. He still struggles. He just had an academy class graduate with 16 police officers. And that was one of his largest he's had in 3 years. I have an academy class coming in on April 14th of 65 deputies. Today, we sit at about, well, on April 14th with those 65 deputies, I'll be at 100.007% staffing. In my corrections side of the house, that's the toughest job. That's really where we focused our most energy when it came to staffing, because they were critically hurt with staffing losses. See, for the deputies in the field, I could just have one deputy, and he'll respond to all the calls in the county. Might take him a while, right? Got to drive a long ways, be slow response times, but I can have one. My jail, that can't happen. See, I have 29 pods. There are inmates in 29 separate areas that have to have somebody, you hope more than one, but have to have at least one, because if not, you're not watching those inmates. So that was really a tough deal. And remember, they were at almost 7, losing every couple of weeks. So to get them down to where we're at is great. But the real issue for them was this. They were working 12-hour shifts. That's tough for anybody. And I worked that job. That is the hardest job in the world. I spent 10 years in patrol, 10 years in detectives, narcotics, everywhere, all over this agency. Homicide, burglary, sex crimes, internal affairs, just everywhere. That jail, that corrections officer is the toughest job I know. You're locked in a room with 70, sometimes as many as 200 inmates, and you're locked in there, and your whole job is to make it work. You have no weapons. There's no guns or tasers, or it is your gift of gab, your ability to communicate, your ability to de-escalate. And they're so young. We hire them at 18, 19 years of age. and they do a tremendous job. But that's a tough environment, working a 12-hour shift, and here's what makes it worse. I'm working 12 hours and my buddy next door calls in sick. At my 12-hour shift, I'm fixing, he's going to come and relieve me, and he doesn't. They hold me over for 3, 4, 5 more hours, sometimes 6, 7. That's just not right, and it's not fair. And guess what else it does? It creates a real problem for that young man or young woman who wants time off. Maybe I'm good. I'd show up every day like I'm supposed to. But now I'm worried because it's my wife's anniversary or birthday or my kid's birthday. And I know I'm going to get off at 4 p.m. So I have time to go home and maybe have a birthday party with my kids or loved ones. But if that knucklehead Chris Nanos calls in sick at 4 p.m., they're going to hold me over. Now I can't go home for my birthday parties and I can't get time. So what do? I call in sick. It compounds the problem. It makes it worse. And we were actually averaging 67 sick calls a day, on top of the fact that you're so shorthanded. It was a mess. We really needed some help. And so we got some of our better commanders from the patrol division and some patrolmen, some deputies, some of them to go in there and kind of just give an infusion there at that jail, because I need people there to build that up and keep those people from missing out on their family events. It's just not right that you reward somebody, that you punish somebody for doing their job. And that's what was going on. So we've got a better handle today. We're very lucky if we have, well, typically we're right around less than 15 to 10 sick calls a day from 66 in 3 years. That's pretty good. And we're getting better. The morale is getting better. The pay is getting better. All of those things are happening. We have a wellness section that we've developed because we modeled our partners at TPD with their wellness section. And it really is just about treating your staff well, checking in on them, making sure, you can watch all the TV and cop movies you want, but you'll never, ever understand or know what these young men and women see every day in and day out. It's tough. I had in December 2 young deputies, and they're like 21, 22, in a fight with the third young man. They're literally hands-on. They're this close, and in less than 10 seconds, 21 gunshots fired. Those deputies went down. We are so lucky that they didn't. That they're doing well now. But they have a long struggle, a long, hard struggle. And the things these young men and women do and see every day, we need to take care of them better. So we created a wellness section to do just that. These were just some of the many challenges we faced right up front, but we've gotten beyond that. I know that like I say, when we have 65, in January 2021, we had an academy class graduate with 7 people. The attrition ate that up in like 2 weeks. It takes 23 weeks to get through the caddy, another 16 weeks to get through FDO field training. It's 39 weeks. That's 10 months of training. And if I hire 40 deputies in an academy and I'm losing 1 a week, I got to have 40 just to break even. So we're doing a lot better. Our losses are less, our attrition rates have gone down, and our academy numbers are growing up. How we were able to recruit in an era when it just seemed like there was nobody wanting to work, I can only attribute it to my team. When I came on, I started talking to our recruiting team, some good young men and women who worked hard. They came in with a book about this thick of all the efforts they've made in recruiting. I think you probably saw some commercials or on the sides of buses and billboards and come join us. They even went to San Diego and stood on the piers when the naval ships came in and young men and women were leaving, handing pamphlets saying, come join us. And I said, wow, that's quite a bit of work. What worked the best? What got you the best bang for the buck? And that young man said, oh, that's easy. That's just word of mouth. That's our team telling the neighborhood kid or the young man or young lady who lives next door, hey, come join us. But they're not going to do that if they're not treated well. They're not going to do that if they feel like they're being bullied or being managed improperly. No, I want them all to like us, but you got to hold them accountable too. As a boss, as a supervisor, as a lieutenant, captain, sergeant, you need that. And if you do that, just think of the young man or young lady who's working hard every day, doing the right thing, and she sees this, here's this knucklehead Nanos guy over here just goofing off, and I don't discipline Nanos, or I at least pull him aside and get him to pull his own weight. What have I told your good employees? These are simple things. We just know that's the way we need to be in when we work with a large corporation like this, because that's what it is. Some 1,500 employees or close to now. We're getting closer to our numbers. You know, one of the things too we've done is we had a number of challenges with our budget. It's been a lot said about how last year I was so much over my budget, and I argued that I'm underfunded, that you gave me a raise, which I appreciated, for $5 million, but you didn't pay for that raise. So now I'm $5 million short. We've gotten beyond that. We're working with our county now. I get that you know, budgets are tough, and I'm always going to say I need more people, I need better equipment, I need more everything, right? I'm not going to be right all the time. And that takes a little bit of learning on my part. But I do believe that I have a team that really needs to be supported better than they have been in terms of staffing and in terms of pay. When the last administration in here just literally cut people, hundreds of people, 400 people, that's millions of dollars that the county didn't pay. But now I'm paying for it. You're paying for it. So we have, every decision we make matters. It really does. When I have a budget that is cut from the first year from 159 million, I came in January 2021. That was the set budget. In July of that year, they cut it to 142. It's a $17 million hit. And yet they'll tell you how the last administration did so well. But the last administration, the first year in, he went from 142 to 155. That was a $13 million increase. In fact, every year after that, he had $5 million to $10 million increase. I'm not saying his decisions were wrong. I'm saying those were his decisions. My decisions are based on need. I need to be responsible, not just to answering calls for service. I need to be responsible for public safety. And we know what works in public safety. That's community policing. We don't want to just be out there as SWAT teams and responding to calls for service as warriors. We need to be guardians. And I know you know that, and I know our community knows that. But it's hard to put together any type of community policing program if you don't have the staffing. So now we're starting to see our staffing come back, and we're starting to meet our budget ends and make it all work. So for that, we've created our school resource officers. I didn't create them. They were there, but they were 6 of them. And we have 22 high school and middle schools and 43 feeders. So 65 schools just in the county. So we increased those school resource officers from 6 to 22. So there's one in every high school or middle school, so they can handle all the feeders. And the reason being is simply this. Yes, we need to be engaged for the active shooters and protect our young ones, all of those things. But that's not the real reason. We know that if you don't graduate high school, you stand 7 times greater chance being in my jail. I need to prevent crime from happening. And you cannot prevent it if you're not engaged with your youth in your community. I'll give you the best story I can think of, an example of just how that works. You know, we think of the police officers at the school grounds and he's marching around and driving around in circles, or he's parked in a parking lot. No, that's not what my team is doing. They're engaged with those students, engaged with the parents, engaged with the school administration, the principals, the teachers. They're there to help get these kids on with their life. Had a 5th grader who was showing up to school, doing well. And all of a sudden, a couple of months into the school year, he disappears. He's truant. And the truancy continues to increase and increase and increase. And finally, my deputy, my SRO, school resource officer, goes to the house, knocks on the door, and finds that there's a mom who has 5 other little ones. She's a single parent, lives in a trailer. Not a very good trailer. Pretty dirty, pretty, just lots of needs, lots of social needs for that family. And this deputy can clearly see that this mom with 5 little ones, all younger than the 5th grader, is struggling. He immediately gets with the food bank, gets food into the house. There was nothing in the pantries. The refrigerator was almost bare. He gets with our Department of Child Services to get them further services, teach mom, get her some training on how to care for her home and maybe take better care of that. Those are the things that a school just doesn't have the time for. But my officers can, and let's face it, how many parents of some teacher knock on the door, they may never open the door. But a uniformed officer knocking on the door, typically they'll open. And we got them the help they needed. This young boy went back to school and he's there now. That's just one small story that I didn't teach these young men and women how to do that. I just knew they had that heart. We talk all the time to our recruits, the young men and women who come to us. We teach them how to, I tell them, you guys are 65 of them on April 15th are going to be in a room by them. All 65, they don't know anybody. They don't know each other. They're individuals, right? And they're one here, one there. But by the time that academy's over, boy, oh boy, they're moving as one. Stand up, salute, march. They are just a team, and they need to be a team. This is too hard a job. You have to lean on each other. You got to be a team. It's not easy for just one person. Everybody has to pitch in. But what I also tell them is this. As an individual, it's important you realize what got you there, what got you into that academy. Oh, yes, we can teach you how to shoot and how to wrestle and how to take tests and all those things. But I cannot teach you how to be a good human being. You have to know that. That comes from your heart, your parents, your school teachers, your friends, your loved ones. You bring that with you. You keep that individuality, and you might prevent something like what we saw with George Floyd. We all saw that, George Floyd. And that was horrible. We watched a murder right in front of us. But what was really disgusting to me, or sad to me, was those 4 or 5 officers standing around watching. They could have just reached over and said, hey, I got this. Hey, step away. Get off of. But they didn't. They lost their individuality. And they just went in there and said, well, this is how we are. We're a team. That's so wrong. I never want them to lose that. I want them to be a team, but I want them to also remember what got them there. Keep that heart. We make mistakes all the time, but they're mistakes of the head, never of the heart. And that's key. So yeah, we've done well with our teams. They're back up where they should be staffing wise. We've got some good programs. My most recent is our special enforcement team. You know, COVID did so much damage to us. When they closed down and they opened up, the roads were like freeways everywhere. No cars were there. People just flying, right? But now we've added more people, more cars, and those knuckleheads are still just flying by. So we need some traffic enforcement, and better than what we've had. And I had 20 some motorcycle cops here when I left here in 2016. We came back, we had 2. I can't allow my community to be unsafe. We go to all these homeowners association meetings and all these HOA meetings and neighborhood watch meetings. And what do we hear? Every time we hear it, traffic is the number one concern. Speeding in their neighborhoods, red light violations. I was right here on the middle of the road, right down the street. I had a red light, me and 2 other cars alongside me. And I know that my light was green, but we couldn't move because not 1 or 2, but like 8 cars kept turning in front of us. It's like, this is just crazy. So we created our special enforcement team that is monitoring, working with our transportation department to hit the 10 busiest intersections at the busiest times of day. So be careful if you're out there and you get a ticket. I warned you, right? And I have to be careful too, because I've gotten them myself. But they know their role is not just enforcement. If they never wrote a ticket, I'd be fine. But I need them to be visible. I need them to make that stop and hand out a pamphlet that gives you some education and how to be safe on the road. We just had a waste of 2 lives of an entire family right in my neighborhood where I live, where one guy is behind 3 cars and thinks they're just going slow, and they were lost. They're doing 5-10 miles on a 40. So he races by him, slams on his brakes, and they all come to a stop. So the back car races past all of them, and he slams on his. It's just crazy. Bad decision after bad decision. They get in a fight on the middle of the road, and one man shot, killed, dead.
Okay, Sheriff, would you like to take some questions?
Yes, please. I'm sorry. Yeah,
Oh,
please.
no problem.
I could go on forever. I apologize, but there's a lot going on.
Yeah, there is, and you've covered a lot of ground. So
there was a question in the chat. Has the number of staff increased since January of 2021? I'm not sure if she's specifically relating to, the entire sheriff's department or the staff in particular departments.
Yeah, so I can give you everything. Let's see. So the entire department is 14. We're authorized 1,475. We're at 1,390 from 1,280. But in about 3 weeks, we'll add 65 more to that staff. That will take us to 1,455 for 98.7% staffing. That's entire department. Deputies and detectives alone, just the deputies, detectives on the street, we're authorized 440. Today we have 391, but in April 14th, we'll have 65 more. That will take us to 456, about 103% staffing. And then in our corrections, we're authorized 423. Today we have 426, so we're at 103% there. So I hope that, again, like I say, we were 1,282 when we came in 2021, and in 2016 we were 1,680. 1,475 is not enough. That's what I'm authorized today, but I can't argue for more people until I fill the empty positions I have.
Susie Anderson has a question. Susie, unmute yourself.
Sheriff Nanos, it's a pleasure to have you here. Thank you for all the work you're doing. My question is about programs at the jail for the inmates? What kind of programs do you have there that will educate, give them something to look forward to that they can do after they leave the jail?
So we have quite a few now. When I first came in, it was we had to just lock everything down because of COVID. Attorneys couldn't get in. Visitors, family, they had to visit on a pad, on an iPad, if you will. Judges, courts, they just shut down, and we opened up with video courtrooms. We only had one at the time. Now we have 7, and so we have all of those things we just had to do to protect the inmates. In fact, that first year, I think we lost 10 inmates, and 5 of them were due to COVID. We gave inmates vaccines and offered them all kind. When I came in, they had no masks, so we gave them simple things like masks. It kept evolving until we finally got a hold, I think, in January 22, and I'm probably the only sheriff in the state, and maybe across the country, that mandated my staff get a vaccine, because you can't. We were just losing too many people, and I can't have that. And so that happened in January of 2022. We never had another outbreak or death in COVID. We had others that I think the COVID rate went considerably down to where it was like 0.0 something%, and we started opening up again. That's when programs started back. Our religious programs, all of our chaplains, our educational programs, our GED programs. I mean, just about every program we had in 2016 is now back, and things are working like they should.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, Sandy has a question. Unmute yourself, Sandy, and ask your question.
Well, hello there. How are you, Sheriff?
I'm good.
Good. On national staffing patterns, numbers, is which is what, somewhere like 2 or 2.1 frontline officers on the street per 1,000 people, something like that. And is that a reasonable standard or that people try to reach?
Yeah, so those numbers, so I know what you're saying. It's like 2.1 per 1,000 residents, and that's a national standard, but it actually breaks it down even better than that. If you're a law enforcement agency of a community that's greater than 100,000 or less than 100,000, those numbers change, just as if you're a law enforcement agency of better than 1 million, less than 1 million, as well as sheriffs. A lot of sheriff's departments provide 0 police services. They're just simply a jail service. And so for this county, for Pima County, in a county our size, population of about 500,000, we should be at about 1.7 per 1,000. We're under, today at 1475, you'd be under 1 per 1,000.
But is there a separate or a breakout number for frontline deputies on the street, like sergeants, detectives that are out there all,
It should be based simply on the patrolman on the street and your detectives, not your supervisors or management. So if you look at our patrol, and our patrol, it's 440 authorized. We're right now 390. We'll be at 450, 455, actually 456 in a few weeks. But even at 440, if that's the authorized strength, we're well over 440,000 that we're responsible for here in Pima County. That's not including Tucson. That's not including Sarita, Marana, or Oro Valley. Just the unincorporated areas. We're well above that. So that gets you. If we were at 440,000. That'd be 1 per 1,000. We're less.
Okay. Steve Linder, unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi. My question is a hypothetical kind of thing. Like, God forbid that Trump is elected president. He's called for the largest deportation in the history of our country. And in order to make this happen, forces chaotic confusion. He's probably going to call upon regional and local police forces to enforce this, and so I'm wondering, in this scenario, how do you see your department and the sheriff's department being part of this? If being forced to do this, do you see any role that you'd have to play?
So the quick answer is absolutely not. But let me go back a little bit here. We know that March 31st is coming. My stance has always been the border is a federal issue. They have just in the Tucson area alone, some 6,000 Border Patrol agents. They have enough resources. They have $50 billion. They have a lot more than I do. But that doesn't mean we don't help them. That we help all of our law enforcement partners. We work well with all of them. John Modlin is the Tucson sector chief. John Modlin and his team text me every night with numbers of street releases. I've been receiving those texts every night for almost a year now. Some days they're well over 150, 250, 300. Some days they're like last night, 0. John knows if he needs our assistance, we're there for him. Just as he knows if I need his assistance, he's there for us. But I'm not here to do John's job, and he's not here to do mine. They have a tough job, and we have a tough job. On April 1st, street releases, it looks like, are going to happen. I've stayed out of that. I've allowed Ms. Lesher, Mike Ortega from the city, the Board of Supervisors, City Council, to do the great work they've been doing with the migrants that we have. A lot of us don't understand that those coming across that come to the gates and say, I need asylum, that is lawful. That's a lawful entry. And the government, the federal government, Border Patrol specifically, has to take all that information down and schedule court dates. We meet with John Modlin, myself, TPD, Chet Kasmar, all of our partners. There's a lot said that I don't get along well with others. I have created the Pima Regional Critical Incident Team, which was created in a matter of a month being here because I have such great partners in all of our communities and law enforcement leaders that said we need to work together. It is our community in all kinds of areas, to include active shooters at our schools, to include our school boards. You know, we met here in my building with Chief Kasmar and 14 school superintendents, all of them, to talk about active shooters in the schools and getting everybody on the same page. This was right after Uvalde. Do you know, all 14 of them, what I was most stunned by? The 14 superintendents all sat there and said, Sheriff, Chief, we really like this idea. We really think this is great. And so, you know, this is the first time ever that all 14 of them are in the same room together. Since then, we've met monthly, training, teaching, going. Those kinds of efforts happen. Border Patrol's no different. We'll work with them and help them. But now we're going to be thrown, this is going to be, because the current situation in Washington is, we're not going to fund any more of what we're doing with Casas Salitas and all of these other migrant shelters. It's going to become a law enforcement issue. They're going to force a political issue on your law enforcement leaders. And that's unfortunate. We'll handle it. We always do. We'll do what's right because that's who we are. But it's not going to be easy. I'm doing my best to stay under my budget. If April 1st comes around, that's going to be really a challenge because we're going to have to spend a lot of resources. And it's going to take a lot of manpower and overtime and other issues. You know, we have fires on the mountain, we respond. We have an active shooter at a Safeway, we handle it. We get some big events. We're capable, we're trained. The U of A basketball team, God bless them, go Cats. Every year for probably 10, 20 years, we've met with all of our partners, U of A, TPD, others, to deal with the potential for riots in the streets should they lose or win. We do that now. This is something completely different. These migrants can be coming at us at 5 a day, to 1,000 a day to 3,000 a day. It's going to take a lot. I don't have in front of me a game plan that says this is exactly what we're going to do when we get this many. But we do know one thing, whether they end up in the city of Tucson or in the city of Marana or the sheriff or just out in the unincorporated area, we collectively as regional partners in law enforcement, we will work it out. We will work together. We're not going to leave somebody alone to handle this mess.
Okay,
I just pray Washington wakes up.
amen. So Mike Bryan has some more questions from the chat box.
Yeah, we have a number. Actually, I wanted to ask you, Sheriff Nanos, if you have time to go a little bit over because we got some
I
questions
have
back up
time.
here.
I'm yours. You just, yeah.
All right, great.
Please.
So first of all, Karen Gleason wanted to know where do you stand on gun control and red flag laws?
Aye. So one of my appointments, Sandy had told me that I only think the only person I think should have guns is cops. He's actually right. I did say that and I believe that. And here's why. When I was growing up as a young man, there were 10 in my family, right? 5 boys, 5 girls. We didn't own a pellet gun, a BB gun, nothing, because we would have put our eyes out. We're just little boys, we just weren't good. But I never had weapons in my household. And I became a police officer in Texas. Think of this as in Texas, 1976. The law was simple. You couldn't have a gun on your person. It didn't matter if it was what do you call it, under in your pocket or exposed or not exposed. You couldn't have it in your car, in your glove box, loaded, unloaded. You couldn't have a gun on your person. If you did, it was a felony. And so when we were young policemen, boy, we found somebody with a knife, that was really bad, right? But we found someone with a gun. Oh my goodness. That was just, today everybody has guns everywhere. That's why I say it's gotten crazy. I think Sandy said that he believes that people should have automatic weapons, AR-15s, AK-40, whatever you want, assault rifles. Why? Should they have bazookas? That is not a constitutional right. It just isn't. And I'm afraid that if we're not careful, you'll get somebody in here who wants to be a constitutional sheriff because it plays well. Oh, look at me, a cowboy hat, and I'm a tough old guy, and I got my rifle. But that's not what we want. We want somebody in here who actually cares about their community. I was recently approached by Rex Scott and others about an ordinance for straw purchases and mandatory reporting of lost or stolen weapons.
Yeah.
And, I told Rex, I said, that's fine. I'm all for anybody who can do something about the craziness we have with guns. I'll support, but that's not enough. And it has no teeth. I really believe we need to start right here with what everybody agrees on, even our Republicans, background checks. Across the nation, look at your stats, 70–80% of the people believe we should have background checks. So how hard is that to get done? Let's push for that, because right here, moms demand action. Some great people, Molly McCassin and Roxanne Taylor Greene, people that were involved in the January shootings, they developed a program and went out to the fairgrounds, our own county fairgrounds, where they sell guns out of trunks of cars with signs. They gave me pictures of signs right on the trunk of the car.
Jesus.
No background checks.
Yeah.
No ID required. Who are they advertising to? Who are they catering to?
Yeah.
That shouldn't happen. And especially on our county fairgrounds, we should be able to stop that. And so I know that Karen knows this. The League of Women Voters are going to have me come talk to them about some of this, some of my ideas. They've researched. They're way ahead of it with me. I've talked to the ATF. They're putting up some rule changes that I hope will help us get to that point where we can say, you're really a business over here. You're not an individual selling a gun. You're a business. Actually, our business owners, the legitimate gun dealerships would get behind that.
Oh, yeah.
They would say, hey, I have to do all these things to have a business. Why doesn't this person? So I'm hoping we can get to that point. And if we do, look, I am 100% behind any kind of gun regulation we can have, but it should be meaningful.
Well, talking of hot button issues, we also have a question regarding abortion. One of our members, Sally Deshpande, I'm going to mispronounce this, Deshpande, asks, Attorney General Chris May said she will not prosecute any abortion cases. Do you have a similar discretion, or are you planning on having any policy regarding abortion-related investigations?
I will not be taking any abortion cases. No, that's my wife has a little sticker says we won't go back. I struggle with that because we need to go back to at least Roe v. Wade, but we're not going to go back to what they proposed, and that's just sad that somehow a government believes they have the right with all the HIPAA laws and all these privacy medical stuff, and now they're going to tell you you can't have an abortion. Wrong. Yeah. This is just wrong.
Thank you. Ellen Parrish wants to know, she says, other agencies find themselves allocating unbudgeted resources to address issues of homeless people or houseless people. Is this also the case for Pima County Sheriff's Office, or do you actually have any unbudgeted resources?
Well, man, I don't have any kind of budgeted resources. I don't have enough. Let me say this about our houseless. You know, we're talking about a new jail, right? $800 million.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money, and I get it. But I don't know that they've done all the back work they need to do on that. And I'm supporting Ms. Lesher and others to say, let's get another commission to look at what a real jail would cost. The reduction of population is a good idea. How we deal with those in our care who should or shouldn't be there. I've said all along, if you're sick, you belong in a hospital, not our jail. If you suffer from substance abuse, you belong in a detox, not our jail. That doesn't mean I don't need a detox center at my jail. That doesn't mean I don't need some mental health care at my jail. My fear, though, is that we have now gotten this it's kind of like pork belly, right? I think we should build the jail and let's add 200 beds for mental health. Let's add 200 more beds for substance abuse. Let's add a transition center for those who are houseless, give them a place to stay for a few days, a week or whatever. All of those are great ideas, but my fear is this. If that's where we're starting, what are we telling our community? You have to be arrested to receive such services? Yeah. Dr. Balfour over here at the Crisis Response Center deals with thousands of mental health patients every day, every week, and does so beautifully. And they're not all incarcerated. Most, probably 90% of them are out on outpatient clinics. We know that substance abuse takes time. It's the deflection programs that TPD had. I understand their frustrations that, gosh, it's just a turning wheel. They just keep coming in and out. And those are tough programs to make work. But for me, I can see a need for some of that, but is it too big? What I really see is this: population, is it overcrowded? Yes. Do we need to reduce it? Yes. Do I need better mental health and detox unit? Absolutely. But the real issue, and the jail's crumbling, it's falling apart. I spent more money in 1 year than the last administration did in 5 years. He was behind 3,000. They ignored 3,000 work orders. What are you telling your team when they're writing in these work orders? I got a fossil leak, got a fossil leak, got a fossil. Eventually they just quit sending it in. You build apathy. The place crumbles. It is a mess. But even that, I'm sure better brains than me can come in and say, oh, we can fix this, that, and the other at $5, $6, $7 million a year last year. It'll probably be double that this year. And even if they had the money for a new jail, I couldn't build it in a year or two. I still got to spend to keep this thing going. And we're doing what we can to keep it going. But the real question to me is this: this is not the safest jail. The science tells us the safest jail you can have is what is known as direct supervision. And direct supervision, the best example I can give you is simply this. If you have Chris Nanos come and babysit your loved one, your little one, is it better that Chris Nanos sits in the living room with a little baby monitor and hears noise and he can go check, he opens the door about that much, yeah, baby's good, and he goes back to doing what he's doing. Maybe it's playing Nintendo or watching TV, whatever, and then 20, 30 minutes, he goes and opens the door again. I guess that's okay. But what's better, that or Chris Nanos is sitting in the room with your child 24/7? That's what we need.
Yeah.
And we can build that. We don't need 12-inch thick walls. What we could do is partitions, cubicles. Australia has their hardest prison, built in 2018, has office space cubicles, little L shapes. There's no doors anywhere. The inmate sleeps on a bunk on this part of the L, and his desk and his TV, his monitor, his computer, his visitations, everything he orders on his commissary, it's all right there. And where are the guards, the COs? Up above, just watching 24/7. That's the safest way. And that's what I'm saying. I don't need $22,000 for a steel door. A deadbolt lock. You go to Ace Hardware and buy a deadbolt lock. I don't know, what is it, $10? For us, $1,800.
Holy Christ.
Oh, this is crazy stuff. And that's why I say I really do understand and appreciate the board's perspective that this is a lot of money.
Yeah.
Certainly there's no political will to do this, but I'm saying to them that we got to do something. And if you just keep kicking that can down the road, some say remodel. Okay, we remodel, and in 10, 20 years, we're going to have to do it again. If you build new, maybe you can stretch it out another 50 years. I want parks. I want better roads. I want schools. I want everything you want.
Yeah.
Every 50 years or so, we might have to buy a new jail.
Yeah. Well, I do have a follow-up on that subject of jail deaths specifically that was asked. And that's, can you give us an idea of causation? I mean, why is this jail producing an unusual number of deaths? Is it overdose? Is it suicide? Is it, health issues, health crisis? Can you break that down for us?
It's all of those. But let me say something to you, because the numbers have really gone haywire out there. I want you to understand, when 2021, we had 10, not 60 or 70, what people are saying, 10 deaths. Mm-hmm. 5 of them were COVID. I'm sorry, but COVID impacted the entire world as it did my jail. We came in with policies. Here, give them masks. Here, offer them vaccines. Here, lock the place down. Nobody gets in, nobody gets out. Here, employees have to get vaccinated. Eventually it worked and it went away. Did I do that? No. Was it a combination of efforts from my team and staff? Yes. But then we moved to 2022 and we hear this thing called fentanyl. And in my years of law enforcement, we've had meth, we've had heroin, we've had cocaine, we've had crack. It just is something else down the road. We know there's something else down the road with fentanyl. And so we do all we can. We buy 2 dogs that are trained for nothing else but to sniff fentanyl. And the only 2 dogs in the country. And now we got 4 of them. And then we buy these electromagnometers that you see at the airport. And we have 2 of them. That's a $250,000. But if you look at that, those electromagnometers, a radiologist makes $250,000 a year. I got 18, 19, and he's got all kinds of schooling. I got 18, 19-year-old kids making maybe 30, 40,000 a year. And they're looking at these things and they're spotting stuff that I couldn't spot, that they just so good at. And people don't hear the fact that, last year we had 8 deaths, 8. I know my opponent says, we don't know what the numbers are. Just FOIA it. Come down and get public records. Go Google it. Look online at the medical examiner's office. But that got crazy too, because the medical examiner's office, not being malicious or political, they were looking at jail deaths in 3 forms: pre-custody, in custody, post-custody. How do you do a pre-custody? I don't even know you're going to be in my jail yet. But they were, and they were doing it for a purpose of studying effects of incarceration. When they said post-custody, they said anybody outside of a jail in the last 30 days. I asked Dr. Hess and Dr. Garcia, our health doctors, that says, why 30 days? Why not the last 31 days or 26 days? What made 30 days? And more importantly, if I get ran over by a car, what does that have to do? No, I have to deal with in custody that the courts have defined. In custody is simply this: you're not free to go.
Yeah.
So if you're not free to go, you're in custody. We had 10 in 2021. We had 10 in 2022. 4 of those 10s were fentanyl. Last year we had 8. Do you know what? The last one was in September. Knock on wood. Doesn't mean, I know my opponent sits there and says, I will not have any deaths in my jail. Wow,
I can't guarantee
I
that.
praise him, but let me tell you something. Right now today, I have 3 inmates in my jail who cannot be released. They are really bad people suffering from stage 4 cancer.
Yeah.
They will probably die in my custody. I can't, it is what it, yes, I get it. Death happens. These people aren't in the best physical shape when they come to us. They do suffer from mental illness and substance abuse. But you know what the best thing was that we did to slow down the death rate? It was all my idea. I had this great plan. I was just so bright. No, it was, we got our staffing levels right. Today we're at 100%. If we have more people there to respond faster, who have eyes on, hands on, chances are we're going to save you. What they don't tell you is this. Last year alone, 2023, we had 141 Narcan saves. It's too easy to deal with the doom and gloom. We need to be looking at, we see a challenge. We know it's tough, but we're going to get beyond it. We're going to meet that challenge. And there's going to be some failures along the way, but we'll succeed. But it's got to be a success that's realistic. I can't tell you we're not going to have any deaths in that jail. I wish I could. I wish I could prevent them all. It's out of my hands.
Is that 141 saves with Narcan
Narcan,
in the field, including the jail, or just the jail
No,
itself?
so the jail had 141 saves, but remember, that's not one dose. That's an actual save. Some of these people we give 8 or 9 doses to. So when they come out with numbers that said last year we had 863 Narcan uses, that's a little misleading. It was 141 incidents, 863 usage. We track all these things. People make up numbers, and I don't know what to tell you except come down and ask us. We'll give them to you. I got all the paper here in front of me, charts and graphs. They give me all kinds of neat stuff, but it just every day we're dealing with different issues. Could be a personnel matter, could be a loss of a employee's parents. Those I think for the community, they just need to know that we care. We care about this community.
And by the way, if you have those charts and graphs and so forth in digital form, we'd be happy to have them and link them to your video that's going to be on YouTube in the notes so that people can have those resources.
Some of these are pencil scratchers, but I can get them into digital form, and we will certainly send them to you. Yes,
that'd be great. One of our members wants to know if all arrestees are strip searched upon being booked into jail, and if not, why not?
No, and the reason being is because there's constitutional court decisions that say you strip searching someone without probable cause is pretty demeaning. Remember, we're dealing with a populace that's 95% innocent.
Yeah,
they're just waiting for their trial. And if we have any suspicion, for example, you come in and say, yes, I'm a drug user, we're probably going to strip search you. If you were found with 1 pill, we're probably going to strip search you. But just because you're arrested, the Supreme Court has got really tough, and I believe it's right.
Yeah.
You have to have more than just you're under arrest, so we're going to strip search it. There is a dignity there that needs to be given.
All right, we're caught up. I think Sandy has a question.
Okay, so Sandy, you have a question.
Yep. One more. You mentioned that one of the things looking at the jail as a kind of last resort, which a housing situation, the mental health component, the mental health situations that deputies deal with on calls. Are we as a society asking too much of police work? All of us trying for you to solve, you and your people to solve everything society has to deal with.
Look at our migrant issue. They've not been able to solve it, so I'm afraid it's going to become a law enforcement issue, and it's going to cost us. Yes, I think you're probably better. That's a question for my 911 dispatchers. They get a lot of calls, and some of them are, hey, I got a leaky sink. It's like, okay, let me get you a plumber. But it just, people get frustrated. They get worried. They not sure. I got to get a problem solved, and they know that's what we do. We are problem solvers.
Well, Sheriff Nanos, thanks so much for your presentation. You covered a lot of ground, and we really appreciated it. And thanks for all the great questions from our Democrats of Greater Tucson. Lots of great questions and lots of great answers. So let's hear it for Sheriff Nanos.
Hey everybody, it's Senator Mark Kelly. As all of you know, Arizona Democrats have had a lot of important wins over the last few years. We won 2 U.S. Senate races, and we delivered Arizona's electoral votes to President Biden and Vice President Harris. We elected Governor Katie Hobbs, Secretary of State Adrian Fontes, and Attorney General Chris Mays. Now, those elections were close, and our victories mattered. Arizona Democrats from the federal to the local level have delivered real results for our state on critical issues like combating climate change, lowering prescription drug costs, protecting the right to vote, and preventing more restrictions on abortion access. The Democrats of Greater Tucson offers the opportunity to hear from elected officials and candidates about that important work and the issues that matter to them. That information will be invaluable as Arizonans head to the polls. So this election cycle, whether you're signing up to knock doors, make phone calls, or joining the Democrats of Greater Tucson to hear from and speak to Democrats in our area, please know that your voice matters and we need you on this team. Thank you.